Tony, this is our gauge isolator, and you've had a lot of experience in the race car, and I know that this is one of your favorite pieces. So can you elaborate a little bit on the benefits and function of this?
Sure, Carrie, I'd love to. I mean, this is one of my favorite pieces with Seals It. It's not only functional, cosmetics, it's great. I've built cars for Bobby's for 10 years. I've driven cars for 50 years, ever since I was 5 years of age. And there's just so many benefits with a gauge isolator. The first with the gauge isolator being with the circle track and the roundy round guys, a lot of issues with the needles falling off. They used a press fit needle, and the vibration would shake the needle loose and come apart. Very, very poor durability on the gauge. The gauge isolator, with this in mind, this absorbs the vibration, and then going to the second level, what I really like also is it eliminated the use of the bracket and these two little annoying nuts and washers. It fastened it onto your dash or cowling or whatever else, Carrie. The other thing is we evolve in racing. Weight is important. So we went down to carbon fiber, 30 thousandths aluminum. Now picture the U bracket that has to clamp and crush into our beautifully designed pieces, put markings in it. The mechanic has to go back to these two little nuts and washers and screw them down. And the final deal that I really enjoy about this is the fact that a lot of people of racing, they say, I've done that for 20 years. It's worked like that for 20 years. Well, nowadays with high electronics and voltage and so on and so forth, any loss of that is critical. Guys would run ground wires off these. Fellas, it's not the place to ground your engine, your battery terminals, or anything like that. Performance is lost and reduced. The other neat option about this is the fact that people, as they learn with rubber products, rubber is a gripping type of a material, Carrie. Like, even when you groove a tire, it catches. We use talcum powder. We use something of that nature. I was sitting in Pennsylvania, and I was trying to put the gauge together in a designed firewall that I had to show the customer. And I couldn't get the gauge in. It was 90 degrees. It sat in the dash, and it wouldn't go in. And I was drinking my iced tea from one of the favorite fast food places. Took the moisture, wiped it around. What I like to use now is a window cleaner, not a lubricant of oil base, because what's nice about a window cleaner is once it lubricates and once it dries and dissipates, it'll bite and grip, where Armor Alls or those lubricants will not allow the gauge to lock down once it's installed. This piece works like this. Again, when you disassemble this product, you can peel the rubber back, squirt a little of your stuff in the back. If you need to, an air hose, again, if it's 90 degrees and you're somewhere, it's going to be hard to get out unless you lubricate something. Slides off simply. I was in Florida with a sprint car team. They wanted a gauge isolators. The panels were already made up, dropped with the engines. And at that point, they also had clearance issues with the chassis built where the gauge was too close to the injectors. So they wanted to pull them out. They made spacers. A good friend of mine from Pennsylvania Posse guys. I went down and said, let me do this. Oh, we have to tear them apart. You don't have time. No, you don't have to tear it apart. He took the brackets off, dropped the gauge through the hole. I took this grommet, reversed it, stretched it over the gauge, simply over the gauge, slid it back in, installed it in the cowl dash, took the gauge, it's hooked up all stuff here, slid it through, and now the gauge is installed like this and reduced an inch of clearance, gave them an inch more clearance back at the injector here.
So there's a lot of customizable options that are available with this piece as well.
Exactly. The only limitations is your creativity with what you need to use it for. It just does a fantastic job. We also have it in the 2 5/8 or the 2 16. Weight conscious, smaller gauge, smaller deal, less weight.
Does it stay in place if you crash?
I hear that you've tested this product.
Well, I think one time I crashed at Eldora. I think it was once in a sprint car, and it was a little ugly. But I do remember calling Skip. I had these gauges installed, and again, when you're clocking these, if you want the needle straight up like some drivers do for readability, clock the gauge, because once you put it in the heat, it does grip, which is what we want it to do. But I clocked the gauges maybe 14 times over the sprint car at Eldora. We all know Eldora is fast and crazy, and as they were hauling me out of the car, this time I was conscious, so I could see some things, and I thought, man, these gauges are going to be laying on the dash or steering wheel. They were perfect, didn't touch them, ran the rest of the season.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that it's worked out so well for you and that it's become such an asset in the industry.
Many teams that had to replace gauges 2 and 3 times a season have run 1 and 2 years like they should with the gauge.